10, 9, ignition sequence start. All engines are running.
Liftoff. Roger, the clock is operating. We're underway.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And as our toe slips over the line, it's time now for Kerbalcast Episode-41. This is what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps.
And also, let's not forget, dude, that keeping wildlife, an amphibious rodent for, domestic within the city, that ain't legal either.
And I am your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin. With us today, our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
Coming up in today's program,
On the Kerbal Party Probe and to Tylo and back. It's our progress in the game.
Amy K joins us once again to talk about the Real Solar System mod.
Your letters and tweets in the mission briefing featuring an audio letter from Andy M.
And a Kerbal card game. Nos will have the details for us. Well, welcome back, sir. This is kind of an odd week for you. You're actually you're not out of town as much.
Well, yet.
Yet.
Yeah. It's like normally I'm out for 4 days, but now the 4 days are 1 day later. So.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm shipping out tonight.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we normally record on Sundays.
Yeah.
We have been lately, and we're actually recording this on a Monday evening.
Yeah. Like old times.
That's unusual.
Yeah.
That is very unusual. In case anyone is curious as to why there's suddenly this whole Big Lebowski thing going on, somebody made a comment. Amy K was on the show last week, and somebody tweeted and said, Amy really tied the podcast together because they know I like the Big Lebowski, and they know that I quoted a lot, and for some reason that just stuck. And I've been watching, I have the movie on my iPhone, and it has been running on a loop nonstop for the last week at work. That is the perfect movie to have kind of going in the background.
I hope your boss isn't listening.
Yeah, really? Well, I was very productive. I mean, it was just, like I said, you know how background noise can kind of help you?
Yeah.
Because it blanks out distractions.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, I've had that movie on a loop for the last week. I mean, I've literally watched it like twice a day.
Yeah.
For the last several, I'd say probably the last 5 or 6 days, it's been on a continuous loop.
So, Haywood Floyd, your tweet inspired the theme for this podcast title.
That's right. You inspired some very obsessive movie watching.
Yeah.
I will say very quickly, I spent some time on Steam this past week watching some people play. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely fascinating. Jim 3535 is playing with the Remote Tech mod, which requires you to establish a communications network.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to watch. Have you seen people do mods and things?
No. I mean, I've watched a little bit here and there, but I haven't seen anyone mess around with mods.
I have to say, it's really interesting to watch people play, especially if they're playing with mods that you don't have. It introduced some issues that I never have to deal with. For example, he was trying to aero brake around Eve, and the thing is when he dipped into Eve's atmosphere, he had to retract his antenna because otherwise the atmosphere would rip it right off, right?
Yeah.
Well, closing the antenna means that he no longer had control of the craft.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It introduces new challenges.
Oh, that's got to be rough.
It was very interesting to watch because those are challenges that I've never had. I don't play with that mod, so I've never had an issue where I haven't had control of a ship. The only time I ever lose control of a ship is if I don't have electricity, which happens on occasion. Sometimes I'm not paying attention and I run my battery down.
Yeah,
like I have lights on or I keep the SAS on. And for some reason the battery's not recharging.
Yeah, you got to pull around the dark side of it where you get some sunlight. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I have no control. But that was a lot of fun. I also, your uncle was talking with me on Steam as
Oh,
well.
how nice of him.
Yeah, it was. We had like a little party going. I was watching Jim 3535, and I was learning a lot watching him. And then your uncle was talking to me at the same time, so I had two conversations going, and I was watching one person play.
That's cool.
So that's I like that new feature. Steam has added that.
Yeah,
But-
no, it's been really cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. On a completely different note, I have decided that there's one place that I would never, ever, ever want to live. Do you know where it is?
Where's
Okay. Do you know how the KSC is kind of like, okay, you know how Florida, NASA launches from kind of the midpoint of Florida,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, in Kerbal, the Kerbal Space Center is kind of, it's kind of on a Florida-ish type peninsula type thing. Well, it is one continuous continent, but if you look at it, if you pull back far enough, it's basically a gigantic gulf,
Yeah.
okay? And there's another, I don't know if the continent is divided up into countries or it's all supposed to be one country or whatever, but there is another kind of peninsula type thing that sticks out, and it's much further down range. If you head 90 degrees, if you head in a 90-degree arc, it's downrange of the KSC. I have decided that's where I would never want to live.
Okay.
Because what happens is I will launch my ships and I will start to lean over to to flatten out my orbit, right? And I have watched a lot of times when I jettison lower stages, they remain airborne long enough to crash into that other peninsula.
Yeah. So it's constantly getting bombarded.
Yeah, and I always think, I'm so glad there's not a city there.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you imagine those people, it's like every day in the news it'd be KSC is launching another ship and they'd be, oh no, everyone get underground. So yeah, that's where I don't ever want to be.
Yeah, constant debris falling now.
Yeah. So just a quick update. The last time we spoke, I told you that I was trying to get to Tylo.
Yeah.
I have landed and just finished just before we started. I lifted back up off the surface and rendezvoused with the orbiting ship.
Yeah, I saw that right whenever I came in. I saw that,
So-
it looked cool.
Do you know what this means? I have one
Yeah,
more-
you have one left.
I have one. When I go, my next target is Bop. And once I land on Bop and return, I will have been to every planet and moon that is accessible in the game. The only thing that I will not have done all of, they added when they added the NASA mod. You remember
Yeah.
they added all the asteroids? I've been to one asteroid. I haven't been to all of them.
Yeah.
But once I finish with Bop, I will have been everywhere in the game.
Wow.
That's going to be interesting.
Yeah. That's gonna be an interesting feeling.
Yeah. Well, what is funny though is it puts a lie to something that I said a long time ago. I don't remember which episode it was, but it was one of the first couple. I was talking about, you and I were describing ourselves as players, and you were saying, I'm a beginner, I'm just starting, and I was saying I'm a mid-level player,
Yeah.
and I don't consider myself an advanced player. You said to me at the time, if I remember right, you said, when would you consider yourself to be an advanced player? And I said something to the effect of, once I've landed on everything that can be landed on, that's when I would consider myself an advanced player.
Yeah.
Well, I'm almost at that point, and I don't feel like an advanced player. I still feel like a mid-level player.
I think that means you have some humility, if anything.
Well, it reminds me of a quote Neil deGrasse Tyson said. He said, the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know. And I think that's kind of where I am, which is the more I've learned to do in this game, the more I've discovered that I don't know how to do in this game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mentioned watching Jim 3535 on Steam. He was doing things that I had never even considered. And I had the experience a couple of weeks ago of North Star watching me and, having a heart attack about some of the stuff I was doing. And, again, I'm understanding. It's like as much as I've learned, I'm now understanding that there's so much more that I just don't know yet.
Yeah.
So I still, even though I have reached my arbitrary benchmark that I set way back when, I still don't feel like an advanced player.
No, I get that. It's like you feel like anytime that you've done something, you have a feeling of like, well, I did it, but did I do it to the best of my ability? There's a better, more efficient way I could have done it,
Right.
And then with something like KSP, there's different ways of doing it. Like you've been to all of those like that, but you haven't been to anything on a space plane. You haven't done anything with some of the other features they have.
Right.
And then you have mods. So, I mean, if you want to do kettlewell mode, then like you're back to square one.
Well, we have Amy's coming up in the program in a little bit. She's playing with Real Solar System mod, the mod, the Real Solar System. Kettlewell mode continues to get more and more difficult.
Yeah.
She sits around and just dreams of ways to make this game more difficult.
Yeah.
Part of why I don't think of myself as an advanced player, though, and we'll get to this when we get to the tweets. Last week, I had mentioned that I was having trouble with Tylo. I was saying that for some reason, I was having great difficulty slowing myself down enough to land and still have any fuel left over. And I said that Tylo doesn't have that much gravity. And you have the tweet, and you'll read it when we get to it later on. But somebody tweeted, and they said, actually, that's wrong. Tylo has about 80% of the gravity that Kerbin has. And that was a good learning experience for me. Because it made me realize that I had locked in an assumption. I made the mistake of locking in an assumption and then never checking it. Because once they said that, it was like, of course, now I understand why I'm having trouble slowing down enough. But mentally, I had locked in the assumption that because Tylo is so similar to the Mun, it must be similar in all respects.
Yeah.
And I had made that false assumption going there that this is going to be just like landing on the Mun. And in reality, it's not. Because typically what I do a lot of times, like when I went to Lathe and when I've gone to other places, a lot of times what I do is I'll get on the wiki and I will research and read about where I'm going. And then I'll kind of tailor whatever the ship is that I need and my approach to actually getting there. Well, I had assumed that Tylo was so much like the Mun that I didn't do any of that. And then I kept running into, why can't I slow this thing down enough to land? And then I got that tweet. No, there's a lot of gravity. And it was, now I get it. So I said early on when we first started this podcast, I said early on that I would always talk about, neither one of us are experts.
Yeah.
We don't claim to be experts. Never do. And one of the things that we said straight out was we're going to be honest about our learning experience. When we make mistakes, we're going to talk about them because, not only do we learn, but the listeners learn with us. And that's a lesson right there. Be careful about being locked into assumptions. Have you heard the expression about the word assume? When you assume, it makes an ass out of you and me. So, yeah, that's very relevant. I was locked into an assumption. And until I broke with that assumption and looked at it from a new angle, I was not able to land. I kept trying over and over to bring a ship down on Tylo, and I couldn't do it.
You pretty much described like the main message or
What?
one of the main messages from Big Hero 6.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I haven't even seen it.
Yeah. There were a couple, but one of them was like, just try to view things differently than how you are. And
Really?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Interesting.
Yeah, I watched it the other day.
So does Pixar owe me money? Is that what you're saying? Or do I owe them
No,
money?
you probably owe them money.
Yeah. I owe them the cost of a ticket.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
What was one thing that I thought was kind of cool was once I realized the issue that I had, I realized that the lander itself did not have enough fuel and it didn't have enough horsepower to slow down enough. So what I ended up doing was I used the orbiting ship that I had, which had a lot more powerful engines and a lot more fuel. And this was really tricky. And it took me about 3 attempts before I was able to pull it off well enough.
Yeah.
But what I ended up doing was I pointed that thing retrograde and I blasted the engines full power, which slowed me down enough to bring me in for a landing. What I had to do was, once I got close enough to the surface, I had to find the right point to disengage the lander from the big ship under it.
Yeah.
And then bring the lander down by itself. And I had to find, there was a point that I had to find where I disengaged close enough to the surface to where I didn't burn up a lot of fuel coming down, but that I didn't disengage so close to the surface that I didn't have time to slow down enough. But I had to essentially cut loose a much bigger ship under it before I could bring it in for a landing.
Yeah.
And it took me about 3 times before I actually hit the right spot. And when I did set it down, it turns out that the lander had eaten up more than half of its fuel and did not have enough to get back up into orbit and circularize. So what I did was I sent a second lander, except it was automated. Nobody was on board.
Yeah.
And I brought it in for a landing using the exact same technique. I'm going to brag because I'm actually a little proud of this. I brought in the automated lander. Do you know how close I got it to the other lander? 803 meters.
Wow.
It was, it was a little bit of a walking distance, but I mean, considering how difficult Tylo was to land on, given how I was having to do it, to be able to get that close. I mean, they were, the 2 landers were clearly visible. They were close enough to where they were clearly visible. And once I landed the other one, my little Kerbal, I think it was Limcott. I would love to know who sits around and thinks up these crazy
these
names.
Kerbal names.
Yeah. But I think it was Limcott, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
But I mean, once I landed the automated lander, Limcott got out of the one that didn't have enough fuel, walked over to the other one, got into it, got up into orbit, rendezvoused with another orbital ship that I had sent, and that's where I am now. I just got done rendezvousing.
I know it's not really at all what you described, but whenever you're describing disengaging from it while it's going, I couldn't help but think of whenever the Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, yeah.
Like whenever it was falling through the atmosphere and then took
on New Caprica?
Yeah. That was just, I don't know. I just couldn't get that image out of my head. I'm going to have to, see if I can get that to work.
Yeah, we have to have that music, that driving, thumping music.
Yeah.
This is a complete aside, but that scene was so cool. That's one of those moments that every now and then I'll just pop that episode in and just watch that sequence because it was just so well done.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. If you really want a challenge, try and do that. Try and pull that off where you're burning retrograde. Essentially, the orbiting ship, the ship that's supposed to get you home, the one that's big enough to get you home, burn that thing retrograde, and then disengage the lander. And understand now, I did not have a Sepratron. The lander was connected to the other thing by a senior docking port. So it wasn't a matter of hitting the space bar and separating the lander. It was, not only is this thing plummeting to the ground, in order to disengage the lander, I had to right-click and undock, which takes a lot longer than just thumping the space bar.
Yeah.
So that was part of the challenge, was not only figuring out where the right place to disengage was, but giving myself enough time to where I could, because when you're falling and that thing is moving around, it isn't that easy to put your mouse pointer where it needs to be.
Yeah.
so that you can right click and select undock. So you had to kind of build in enough of a margin to where you could do that. So anyway, yeah, it took me about 3 times. Now the question that I have, though, and I have yet to decide what I'm going to do. The question that I'm wrestling with is, do I now send the ship that I have in orbit around Tylo with a lander? Do I now send that ship on to Bop and make my landing there?
Yeah, yeah.
And the reason that that's an issue, the ship that I have in orbit that the lander has docked with has a limited amount of fuel. So if I use that ship and go to Bop, I probably have enough fuel to get from Tylo to Bop. I probably would not have enough fuel to get back from Bop to Kerbin.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have to do a refueling mission either way, probably.
Yeah.
The question that I have yet to answer, I have to make a decision on, is would it be easier to simply send another lander directly to Bop, bring it around Jewel, aero brake, and then go on to Bop, rather than, because if I decide to use the lander that I currently have in orbit around Tylo, what I've got to do is I've got to come in, aero brake around Jewel, get into orbit around Tylo, rendezvous and dock, refuel, then I have to send that ship to Bop, get into orbit there, land, come back, rendezvous, dock, and if I have enough fuel, leave there and go back to Kerbin. Would it be simpler simply to bring a fresh ship in, go directly to Bop, land, come back, and go home?
Yeah, and save you the time.
I haven't decided yet.
Yeah, which one will save you the time?
I haven't decided yet. But the rescue ship that I sent to Tylo, this is another lesson that I learned. You have to be real careful about parking orbits around Jewel. The rescue ship was mission 4.
Oh. I'm
not kidding.
Yeah.
What I did was I brought in, I sent one ship, okay, and I put it in, I aerobraked around Jewel. Do you remember I had said that 100 kilometers for a periapsis around Jewel seems to be the perfect aerobraking? Well, that's what I did, was I came in, I set my periapsis at 100 kilometers around Jewel, and I ended up with a nice elliptical orbit. Well, I had another ship coming in behind it, which was a tanker, and I thought, okay, I've got this ship in the Jewel system. I can leave it. I can switch over to the other one, bring it in, and and proceed from there. Well, when I brought the other ship in, I started going, okay, where's the first ship? It turns out that if you leave a ship unattended, and I don't know for sure what happened, but I can pretty much guess that one of the moons of Jewel grabbed it and threw it back out of the system, because when I went looking for it, it was in a nice circular orbit around the sun. It was completely out of the Jewel system.
Yeah.
So when I brought the tanker in, thinking, okay, I don't want to lose this one, I put it in a fairly wide orbit around Jewel. Inside Lathe, inside, it was an orbit that was inside the orbit of Lathe, which is the closest end moon to Jewel. Okay, and then I went and deorbited the other ship. I actually crashed it into the sun. I just some little gremlin in me just said, "Ooh, that would be fun to crash it into the sun." So I crash it into the sun, and I go back to the tanker, and it's gone. It apparently, the orbit that I had established was close enough to Lathe, where Lathe, I guess, grabbed it and threw it out.
Wow.
So that was 2 ships I lost.
Yeah.
Just by leaving them. But anyway, and then the third one that I came in was simply to refuel. And then the fourth one is the one that came in with the automated lander. So it took me 4 attempts just to get something down there to rescue my my Kerbal.
Yeah.
That was an interesting.
They're worth it though. Those little Kerbals.
I guess. But I guess the lesson to be learned is be careful with parking orbits around Jewel.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're not close enough to any of the moons because they will apparently grab them and throw them out.
You got to stay within the lines.
You have to stay within the lines. One last thing I want to mention before I move on. I had another Kerbal in the Wild sighting.
Oh.
I was at a entertainment store.
Yeah.
Wearing my Kerbal shirt with.
Is that what they call those now?
Well, CDs and Blu-rays and. I was trying to say it without saying the title, but I was wearing my Jeb shirt.
Oh yeah.
And the guy behind the counter, whose name I wrote down, Ryan, hello if you're listening.
Hey Ryan.
Ryan was saying, he goes, "Oh, I love that game." He goes, "It's my second favorite." He says, "It's my second." If I remember this right, he said that there's two games. The two games that he's got the most time in, if I remember right, he said Demon Souls is number 1 and then Kerbal is number 2.
Oh, see, normally whenever you hear the top two and one of them's Kerbal, the other one's usually Minecraft.
Yeah, that's true.
In my experience, anyway.
That's true. But anyway, I mentioned that we did a podcast, and he was like, "Oh, really? That's cool."
Yeah.
But anyway, and then I had a semi-Kerbal in the Wild sighting. We went to go see a movie the other day. And I was wearing my other Kerbal shirt, the I Explode Kerbal.
Yeah.
And the guy said, "I've always been interested in that game. I'm waiting for a Steam sale to get it."
Well, one of them just ended.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I wish I had been paying attention to the Steam sales.
Yeah, pretty much every Steam sale Kerbal's been up.
Yeah.
So just if you're on the lookout for it, next Steam sale.
So I have 1.5 Kerbal in the Wild sightings.
Yeah. Sowing the seeds, sowing those little Kerbal seeds.
Sowing the seeds of discontent.
Yeah.
I'm basically saying, just surrender your life. Surrender your life to this game. Well, I know you have progress in the game.
Yeah.
Because I saw you on Steam the other day.
Yeah, it was on the party probe.
Party probe.
I had three people watching me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were chatting. It was Inspector Gadget, Moa the Dinosaur, and MK3424.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I get MK and Mittenpo confused because they both start with M.
Yeah.
And so, like, whenever my Steam's in alphabetical, it's like 2 people with M, 2 people playing Kerbal.
Did you say MK3434?
3424.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's funny because I was talking with Jim 3535.
Oh, yeah.
So.
He's an earlier model.
I was going to say.
Yeah, but one of them started watching me, and then a couple others joined up, and they had like a little chat going. And so I would go onto that chat and accidentally up my thruster and crash, and go back into the chat and talk with them. So
that's a lot of fun, isn't it?
Yeah. So what was that's the thing that kind of gets me is if you look at all the games that I have a lot of time in, like Payday 2 or Team Fortress, and all those. They're all social kind of games. Like,
right.
I have a lot of hours in SoulForge and I'm playing against people. Like, I don't really play a lot of single player stuff.
Right.
And so
they're social in the sense that they're multiplayer games.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't really get much of that whenever you're dealing with playing Kerbal because it's kind of like a singular experience so far. There are multiplayer mods I've heard, and multiplayer is something that Squad has talked about possibly being in the works.
I'm really curious how that's going to be implemented.
Yeah, you could seriously do, you do the Battlestar Galactica thing, have somebody controlling a massive ship and another person control something that flies off of it.
Right.
You have one person, orbiting a planet and the other guy trying to land something and then come back up. I don't know. It could have some possibility to be pretty cool.
Well, also remember I had also mentioned the space race. Idea that you would be literally competing against somebody.
And the only reason we have destroyable buildings is so you can destroy someone else's buildings.
That's right.
Yeah. So we, I was playing on there, and
that would be the rival space center would be on the other peninsula that I was talking about. And you would just be bombing them with your first stages.
I dropped some pieces on there. Didn't mean to.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's kind of cool having that little social aspect. But I was flying around. I had a probe that was flying around the Mun.
Okay.
And I was trying to get contracts for doing flybys. And thank you to everyone who had brought it up. I know North Star did, and MK did, while I was chatting with all of them, that I was too high for my thermometer to actually get any readings. I needed to be lower. So I get the thing really low, and I do one, and I start setting myself up for the next one, and then I realize that the first one I did was above 91
kilometers.
91 kilometers, and
I get I'm forcing myself to pay attention.
Yeah,
because I have a tendency to because sometimes it'll read meters and sometimes it'll read kilometers. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll say meters when I mean kilometers.
It's 9,100 meters.
Yeah.
I had to be above that for one. And the other one, I had to be, I found out I had to be below like 8,600. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, that's going to be rough. And so I go to another one, it was below 90 or 9,100. Mm-hmm. So I get my orbit going, and the guys are looking at me like, oh man, you're having a hard time controlling that thing. My probe, I did not have the parts or the stuff unlocked for SAS.
Oh, okay.
So I'm flying this thing without stability control. So anytime I have a maneuver node, it's like I'm constantly like hitting keys, like zipping the thing around trying to get it to stay stable.
You don't realize how much SAS makes your life.
Oh, it's so nice.
Until you don't have it.
Mm-hmm. Because you don't have to worry, you move it somewhere and it's going to stay pointed that direction unless something massively jarring happens.
Yeah.
So I lowered the thing, and I changed to the what's the purple triangle?
Do what
on the maneuver node? The purple triangles.
The purple triangles
or the red triangles, whatever they are.
You talking about normal and anti-normal?
Yeah, I was adjusting the normal and anti-normal to change the route that I was going in my orbit, so I could rotate it over that node. So I get it, and then I'm going around, and I'm like getting closer and closer, and just inching it down a little bit more each time, and then I'd be off, and I forgot about the how I was spinning around the mun. It was throwing it off. So I was having quite a time with it, which really what would have solved a lot of my problem is if I would have put the apoapsis or periapsis right above that point. If I would have gotten to that, then it would have been a lot easier to control. But I had a limited amount of fuel, and I kept trying on it. The closest I got was 60 meters away from exactly where I needed to be. I was just 60 meters off, and I had about 2 more tries, and then it completely killed me.
Yeah,
so,
I by the way, I confirmed while you were talking. I confirmed, yes, that's
yeah,
normal and anti-normal.
But I was like 60 meters off from this thing, and then I get a little bit closer, and I got too close at one point. But I would be adjusting all of this in the map view, and I would come out of it, and I'd be just skimming over the surface of the mun. Like I could the features were just flying by. It was
right.
It was like somebody flying over mountaintops. It's just like zooming by, and I'm like my little probe. And I know if I had SAS, and if I would have thought to, and one of the guys suggested it, I just knew it was too late for the amount of fuel I had. Mm-hmm. If I would have put the periapsis just right above the point that I needed to be at, that I needed to fly over, and if I would have had the SAS, I would have gotten it.
Right.
But that was the main thing. I just spent a lot of time doing that. And then, I got tired of flying that around, and they had a good conversation going, and I didn't have anywhere to be, so I decided to try to make this is so bad. This is like the worst representation that I could have given him. Like, hey, this is the guy who makes a podcast you listen to. I threw together something to fly to the mun, so I was going to send a Kerbalnaut up to the mun and have him just stay there,
right,
orbiting the thing. So anytime there's a contract for, science from the mun, I could just, use him.
Right.
And I would have the SAS. So I got to make this thing, and I made it too tall, and I forgot struts, and it wobbled all over the place and exploded. And then I did it again, and it was just, still too tall, so it was wobbling anytime I would steer it. So I was like, okay, one more time. And I got the thing going, and it was up. I had an orbit around Kerbin, and then I started expanding that orbit so I could get captured by the mun. Mm-hmm. And between me talking with them and hitting shift tab, whenever what's stupid, and I really should have caught this, and I actually I knew this, but I just kept forgetting to do it. In other games, it's left shift tab is what I do because it's one hand.
Right.
Well, in Kerbal, unless you change the key, which would be the smart thing for me to do, so of course I'm not doing it, is to hit right shift tab.
Right.
And it doesn't affect anything. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't do that. And so
Did you keep throttling up?
Yeah, and I would tap the M key and I'm like, okay, I'm going to zip just past the MUN. And then they said, what are you trying to do here? And I looked at it and I was like, I had pushed so far that I thought Minmus was the MUN.
Oh, really?
Like my orbit was going so far out, and I'm like, oh, maybe we'll get a Minmus encounter.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wait, the plane.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't on the right plane.
Right.
So I was like, okay. I was like, all right, guys, I gotta go. I was like, I'm done embarrassing myself. I managed to get captured around the MUN, and I think I don't think I made it out of it. So I just reverted the entire thing because I didn't want to get him stuck there because I didn't have exactly the orbit I wanted. And I was kind of wondering about just bringing him back, and just sending a probe there because it would have been easier. But with something else actually would have had to have been a Kerbal knot. That way I could do crew reports. But so that's kind of where I left off. I'm setting up a satellite system to where I can just farm those for contracts. Anytime it's like fly over here and report, fly over here and report.
You're talking about like what had been suggested, a bunch of you're creating science probes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm creating probes just to collect.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've had a thing where it's kind of annoying. Anytime I've started contracts that was like set up a specific orbit or visit these places on the MUN, after I've canceled the contract, the markers are still there.
Right.
So like Kerbin has a ton of navigation points just popped up all over it. And it's like, I don't know, I can't get rid of them. So I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to try canceling a few more things and redoing stuff and see what happens. But
okay.
Yeah, it's weird.
That's a question for the listeners.
Yeah.
Can you help Nos?
Yeah, because I know I don't have any specific orbit contracts going, but I have 2 specific orbit navway or like nav point guides in my map view. It's weird.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's where I left off is, 3 of us, or the 4 of us, I guess, hanging out, chatting with on the party probe.
That is, again, going back to what I said, that is so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so glad Steam added that feature. Because it's really it's neat to be able to either play with people watching and talking or watch somebody else and talk with them. When I was watching Jim 3535, I mean, there were a lot of questions I had because he was doing things that I had never seen, and he was using mods that I had never used. He was using one mod where when you're going to aero brake, the you know how you can as you adjust your orbit, it's represented by a blue line, right?
Yeah.
Well, once he lowered it enough around Eve to where he was going to aero brake, the portion of his orbit or trajectory, I guess would be more accurate in this case, but the portion of it that was in the atmosphere was represented by a red section.
Okay, so
it actually showed him the length of his aero braking.
Wow.
And that was something I had never seen. So of course I was like, what mod are you using? And I was asking him all kinds of questions. It was really the only reason I ended up bailing out because it got to the point where it was so late that, I was starting to see double images.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely fascinating to watch somebody. The only thing, I cannot stop doing this. When I watch somebody on Steam, I am constantly trying to use my mouse to change the camera view.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to keep reminding myself that I can't do that.
Yeah, it's like, I don't have my,
Yeah, but it's like, I'll be sitting there watching, I'll go, oh, that looks interesting, and I'll like go over and right click, and I'm going, the camera's not changing. It's like,
it's locked up. What is this thing doing?
It's like, it's because it's not yours.
Yeah.
You big old goofhead. Anyway, that's a lot of fun. I have to say, I'm really glad that they're doing
cool.
that. So what is your, what's your next, are you still doing your network of satellites?
Yeah, it'll be building a satellite network and just completing a bunch of contracts. I'm just kind of bogged down in that right now.
Okay.
And then once I get, I want to get my launch pad upgraded and my VAB, and then I may have enough stuff unlocked that a couple more MUN missions, and then I can start working on Minmus.
Every time I boot up Kerbal, I keep thinking that it's going to it's going to boot up and all of a sudden start downloading some huge file.
Yeah.
And it's going to go, 1.0.
Yeah. Welcome to 1.0.
And we just stranded all your Kerbals.
Yeah. You have to do it now. You have to go to BOP now before it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to decide which is going to be the better way to go.
Mm-hmm.
But back to what I said before, Joule is such a fun system.
Yeah.
There's so much to do, and also visually, there's a lot to be said for swinging around Joule and being able to see like 3 and 4 moons all at once.
Mm-hmm.
It is so rich in terms of, if you want good screenshots, Joule is just tailor-made for it. When you land, it's almost guaranteed to be scenic.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, it was really. I'm glad that I got the tweet talking about the gravity on Tylo. BOP's going to be interesting because it is. It's, from what I've read on the wiki, it is a captured asteroid,
mm-hmm.
and it is on a different plane. It's slanted compared to the rest of everything in the Joule system.
Yeah,
and because it's so small. They said that it's very hard to get to. So that's my last challenge, is to get to BOP. And then after that, I'm considering, after that, I may start trying to finish the rest of the asteroids.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, I was talking to Amy the other day, and she was telling me about all kinds of Easter eggs. And I'm thinking I might start going hunting for those.
Yeah.
She says, do you know 2001, the monolith? She says there's 3 of those on the Mun.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, she was telling me about all the, she says there's a Neil Armstrong memorial.
Wow.
There's all kinds of little Easter eggs.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, and part of me is, again, I still have to get to BOP and get that taken care of.
Yeah, but after BOP, you may go sightseeing.
I may go and try and knock out the rest of the asteroids, or I may go Easter egg hunting.
Yeah.
So
I
don't know.
You still got a long way to go.
I still have a long way to go.
And now your letters and the latest news in the mission briefing.
And yes, it is. And Nos, tell us, what's the first letter we have?
First thing comes from Andy M. He wants to let us know that he has an audio letter for us. He has a little bit of a cold, but we hope you get well soon. But in the meantime, here's Andy M.
Hi, Biff and Nos. So as I said last week, my objective was to get a plane into space. So I used the recent plane design I've been flying and added an extra couple of fuel tanks either side with an engine on each one. I took this off and got to approximately 18 kilometres in height and was doing about 1,000 metres per second. I was having trouble getting enough air to get any higher than this or any faster. So therefore I decided to fire the rockets to see how far I could get. Eventually this took me up to 32 kilometres in height, and I was doing a speed of about 1400 metres per second. So a good first attempt, but still a long way off. Therefore I tried to increase the rocket fuel tank size. Unfortunately this put me over the weight limit of the runway. So I therefore removed an RCS tank and managed to get an extra couple of air intakes on. This allowed me to get my plane up to approximately 22 kilometres, and with a speed of about 1200 metres per second. Again, I was having trouble getting past this, so I decided that I would fire my rocket engines. So off they went, and I kept going, and eventually I actually managed to get myself into space. I knocked off the burners, waited to get to my apoapsis, and managed to circularize my orbit. With this, I was very happy. Next stage was to collect some science before returning to curbing. So, I knew return was going to be interesting with deadly re-entry. Therefore, I did a retrograde burn and got myself down to a periapsis of 50 kilometres. I was hoping this would be slow enough, to make sure I didn't burn up on re-entry. So I entered the atmosphere, and I kept the nose pointing prograde. The temperature started to build up, all seemed okay, when suddenly there was an explosion. So I frantically checked around my plane to see what had happened, and realised everything seemed pretty much in place, apart from the battery and thermometer, which had been on top of the plane, had exploded. Those had exploded. So I thought, that's okay, I shall keep going. Everything eventually started to slow down, temperature started to decrease, but I was in reasonable level of control, went down to an altitude of about 20 kilometres. I thought pretty much I'd survived re-entry. So I thought, I'm close to finishing a survey contract somewhere nearby. I'll fly over there to do this. After realising I'd forgot to actually reactivate the turbo engines, I turned them back on again and set a course and went to time warp. At this point, I needed to, I just need to make a slight adjustment to stop me from gaining too much height. Before I realised it, I'd made the adjustment, and bang, the plane had blown up. I'd forgotten to take the time warp off, hadn't I? And the over-adjustment in time warp caused my plane to explode into a shower of parts. Fortunately, I'd remembered to F5 before starting my descent, so therefore I was going to get to have another go. This time, I decided to burn the rest of my rocket fuel to decrease my speed before entering the atmosphere. I also thought I'd try and keep my nose up to try and protect the battery and the thermometer. Now, it was a good idea from a scientific point of view, unfortunately not so good from an aerodynamic point of view. The angle of attack was way too high, and pretty much as soon as I hit the atmosphere, I went into a spin. Now, I know that flat spins can be quite dangerous to jet fighter planes, but I thought, I'm at 60 kilometres, I've got a lot of chance to get over this. Therefore, I didn't panic. I cut all the engines off. I tried then doing different adjustments, different engine speeds, turned the RCS on. I tried a number of different things, but none of it seemed to be making the slightest bit of difference. I was in a continual flat spin. So, as a last resort, I extended the landing gear and prepared to say goodbye to 2 more Kerbals. But interestingly, my surface speed had actually dropped to about 64 metres per second, but I was still dropping well over 10 metres per second, probably about 30 or 40 metres per second. Anyway, I didn't manage to make any saving changes, and the plane smashed into the ground. There was a series of explosions, so I surveyed the scene of the crash. I then noticed that the liquid fuel tank and the tail fin had managed to survive, and so had the cockpit. And even better, so had the Kerbals inside the cockpit. And as an extra plus, the battery and thermometer on top had also survived. So the 2 lucky Kerbals walked away, and I thought, this deadly re-entry mod isn't that deadly after all. Homer to your mobile, Andrew Mason.
That's famous last words.
Yeah.
I have said that. Remember, I said deadly reentry isn't that big of a deal, and then all of a sudden my capsule started exploding, and I spent a week learning how to re-enter. So
yeah,
we may get another audio letter from Andy in about a week going, forget everything I just said.
Take it back to that last letter.
That's a great letter, by the way. Andy M., thank you so much. We love audio letters.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, man.
And that was a good story, too. So I'm curious if that's going to be famous last words. Let's move on. The next letter comes to us from Top Boom. And being a Star Wars geek, I love the title that he put on here. That's No Moon. Yes. He says, hi, Amy, Biff, and Nos. I just wanted alphabetical.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give a real quick plug for a good, simple mod that adds a fantastic graphic enhancement to KSP. In episode 40, Biff mentioned he couldn't see Joule from far outside the SOI, Sphere of Influence. Distant Object Enhancement corrects this issue and other similar ones. Have you ever looked up at dusk and seen Jupiter or Venus as bright points of light? This mod brings that to KSP. And if you are like me and also suffer from a bit of Kessler syndrome, it will also show flares of illuminated spacecraft debris out there. You can hover your mouse over it and it will happily display Monstrosity 1 debris, as the case may be. Very cool mod and worth checking out in my opinion. Keep up the good work. I always look forward to listening to you guys and gals every week. Homer to your mobile, Top Boom. Again, the mod that he is recommending is called Distant Object Enhancement. If I can find a link to it, I will. I'll post it on our website. What's our next letter?
Progress report from the awesome power of rockets.
Yes.
I haven't left Kerb in a while, but much progress has been made. Good old Kerb. Not all of it by me. This week, my 5-year-old daughter taught my wife, not a gamer, how to fly planes in KSP with a flight stick. She almost nailed landing on the island airstrip on the first go. She's already better than I am. My own progress is that I managed to get my Arduino altimeter. Yeah, altimeter.
Okay.
Working with help from the kind people on the official KSP forum. Really nice and helpful there. So that comes from the awesome power of rockets.
And so that means I have the next letter?
Yeah.
Let's see. Next letter comes to us from Fell Knight. And he says, hi, Biff and Nos. I found your podcast a month or so ago and have finally gotten caught up to the point where you begin to discuss your thoughts about 0.90. and were asking for the opinions of a player who started career mode at that time. I think I can answer this quite well. I originally bought the game during the Steam summer sale and put about 15 hours into it. It was version 23.5 at the time, I think. I liked the game, but got fed up with it because there was no clear direction on what to do or how to do it. I knew that I needed, quote, science to unlock more parts, but I had no idea how to get that science. Didn't know about biomes and basically got stuck before ever achieving orbit. I never even did the, quote, put a command pod on the launch pad and EVA from it because it would never have occurred to me to do that. I did the tutorials up to Mun Landing, but they were useless for career mode at the time because I didn't have the parts to replicate the rockets and landers, so I stopped playing. Back to version 0.90. I found out about it in January and started playing again, and it was a whole new game. I had a couple of stumbles as I didn't realize that I had to accept contracts to get money. But once I figured that out, the race to space had begun. I never had any problems with the parts testing contracts, as they taught me a lot about the parts and how to build a rocket to get to the correct height and speed to complete the contract. The go to this place on Kerbin and take an EVA or crew report contracts helped to teach me about biomes. Because of these, I was able to build up the funds and science required to get into orbit, visit the Mun, etc. I upgraded my buildings in a fairly logical manner and never had any issues with funds, even though I was trading funds for science. A big trick was to complete multiple contracts in the same trip, such as the Visit X on Kerbin and take a crew report /EVA. I would run between the various targets once landed to maximize my returns. The funding restrictions forced me to learn about building efficient and light ships whenever possible, something which is not intuitive, as to just have a little help, just doubling a fuel tank will do for you. This has gotten to be a very long email, but the synopsis is that I love 0.90. I put almost 250 hours into the game in the past 6 weeks, been to the Mun 10 times or so, to Minmus 4 times, and have my first ship on its way to Duna and Ike. I've managed to upgrade all my buildings to max level except the VAB and spaceplane hangar, which are still level 2, and I've unlocked the entire tech tree and have 25,000 science left over. Oops. KSP finally feels like a full game with goals and effective tutorials and paths to get there. If anything, I'm looking at more of an end-game use for the science. It feels like if I can get 25k surplus without ever having left the Kerbin system, there needs to be a use for all the science I'll get when I make my future trips to Duna, Jewel, Eve, and more. Fly fast, fly hard, and fly far. Fell Knight. You know, if Bruce Willis is looking for the title for his next Die Hard movie,
Yeah.
there it is.
Fly hard.
Fly hard, fly fast.
Okay, next one is from a friendly note from Eric S. I wanted to pass along an extremely helpful...
Nobody would say like a not-so-friendly note.
Yeah.
Like a really hostile, angry note from Eric S.
We'll read the hate mail. We'll read it all.
There you go.
We'll take whatever we can get. I wanted to pass along an extremely helpful forum thread that covers a few methods for surface-based construction. A theory crafting link, which will include a craft pack, which has stock and Kethane modules included, which will also include in the listing for this podcast. The threads above are just filled to overflowing with ideas, construction guides, and all sorts of craft files to get yourself into all kinds of base building trouble. The real goldmine, in my opinion, is the theory crafting thread that dives into making your own modules. All this makes the surface-based construction contracts loads more fun. Give it a read and let the colony building commence. Homer to your mobile, Eric S.
Very nice. Do you know I had I was talking to somebody in Steam and I was saying goodbye and I said Homer to your mobile and they went wait. They said what does that mean? I said I see that everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I explained that the YouTube auto closed captioning, the voice recognition, Homer to your mobile is what I Met Jim Lovell translates into. So if you haven't heard that, listen to we did a best of, I think it was episode 30. That's one of the very first segments. If you've never heard that story,
Yeah.
Go and listen.
Whenever I was, I had those, the 3 of those listeners that were, watching me play.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever it came time to leave, I was like, all right, happy Kerbaling, guys. And they all said, Homer to your mobile.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of like our,
It's our catchphrase.
Yeah. So
it amazes me the things that stick.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we do things and they go nowhere.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we do things and don't even think about them.
and
then they catch on.
That's the thing that hits.
Well, I mean, we had, Diarrhea Planet turned into a thing.
Yeah.
The whole episode 6 with Canada.
Yeah, whenever, and they still have the title.
Yeah, we did. We have another letter that actually mentions that.
Oh, really?
That we're coming up to.
Oh, okay.
And so I went in and checked because I was curious. I wanted to see if episode 6 was still being downloaded heavily in Canada. Yeah, for some reason, Canada is downloading the crap out of episode 6.
Yeah, it's the one episode that isn't majority U.S.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll find out. Okay. The next letter comes from Nathania, and it's called More Comprehensive Contracts, Better Science, and Mun Mountain Clipping. Biff and Nas, greeting from frigid Wisconsin. I first discovered KSP almost a year and a half ago, shortly after .22 was released, I believe. At first, I was turned off by the silly elements of the game, since I was looking for a more realistic spaceflight simulator. But the game quickly grew on me. Steam says that I played it over 1,500 hours, but I have a lot of sandwich time in there. See, that's another thing that caught on.
Yeah.
Because you remember we were talking about sandwich time, and I had no idea what you were talking about.
I made it up. I was like,
yeah.
I don't know. I needed some way to describe being logged into the game, but not actually playing it.
Yeah.
So.
And you said sandwich time, and that's a thing. So we need somebody to write in and mention Diarrhea Planet.
Yeah.
We need to bring that back
One
in.
of the guys did. They said that they mentioned that I didn't have any music playing. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm listening to music, because...
Oh, okay. Oh, in Steam?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't have any music playing through Steam.
Right.
And so they're like, oh, yeah, I said, I don't play the music in Kerbal anymore. I listen to albums. I have it up on my other monitor, and I just, listen to music. And I said, I'm trying out some new albums, see if I want to buy anything. And they're like, anything from Diarrhea Planet? Yeah. So they actually put up, there's a new EP, Aliens in the Outfield, which is... a couple more songs they put on Amazon.
Wow.
So there you go.
Are you still listening? Are we on a digression here? Are you still listening to King Khan?
Yeah.
Khan!
Yeah, I bought another album of theirs just a little bit ago.
I have been and always shall be your co-host.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the letter from Nathania. First, I have actual sandwich time. Secondly, I let my kids have fun building spaceships in the VAB, so often I'm not the one playing. Few of theirs fly very far. And thirdly, they invariably neglect to turn the game off when they're done. I can't tell you how many times I've come down to use the computer in the morning to find KSP still running. Well, there's another 10 hours to my tally. I play Sandbox when I'm in the mood to futz around with some fun mission ideas or to play around with various mods. But in general, I subscribe to the Nossian school. There's a school of Nos.
Yeah.
There's a whole school of Nos thought.
Live, crash, die fun.
That's right.
Yeah.
Some future philosophy classes will be teaching the difference between the Nossian and the Biffian school of thought. The Nossian school is career mode is my style. And, one thing about Nos, he has style.
Yeah.
He's rocking it.
According to that one guy who thinks I wear a suit all the time.
Yeah.
Just keep that image. That's a lot better than what I do.
You have Gangnam style.
Yeah.
Gangnam style.
No, just read it. No.
You know what? I want to move to Korea.
Oh.
Serious? Okay, have you seen the video for Gangnam Style?
Yes.
Those are some really cute girls. If that pudgy bastard can be a pop star, I can be a pop.
Have a chance?
In Korea, I could be a pop star. Okay, anyway, back to the letter. That said, career mode definitely needs some tinkering in order to be ready for 1.0. After I've played a campaign for a while, some of the contracts seem flat, isolated, or arbitrary to me. As an aside, I know that people love to hate on the parts testing contracts, but I don't really mind them too much. Last week, someone wrote in suggesting some more narrative-based contracts. I'd like to second that idea. I think it's worth pointing out, do you realize this is like the second letter in a row we've had now where people have actually said they like the parts contracts?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you hear a lot of hate for the parts contracts, but there's 2 letters back-to-back where they like them.
And most of the people that did say they didn't like them were people that played before they were around.
Yeah.
So
I thought that would be, I thought it's important to point that out.
Yeah, definitely.
It would be cool if there were a collection of related contracts that built on each other. The obvious example would be the Apollo missions. Perhaps there would be a series of contracts that reflect a progression from Apollo 8, around the moon, to Apollo 9, take a lander to space, to Apollo 11, land on the surface, and Apollo 15, perform more science, take a rover, etc. But also, I'd like to have more complex contracts that would do a better job of simulating a full space mission with multiple objectives. Rather than just having a contract to collect surface samples from a few sites on the Mun, there could be something more comprehensive. Take Apollo 15, for example. They could model a contract after that. Number 1, land near Site X on the Mun. Number 2, make crew reports, EVA reports, and collect surface samples. Number 3, measure the temperature at X site. Take seismic readings from Site Y. Take gravimetric readings from Site Z. I was never very good at algebra, so. Number 4, travel X kilometers in a rover. Number 5, make a crew report from orbit. Number 6, deposit a satellite in a particular orbit. Number 7, return home alive. This would require you to think ahead when you are designing your mission. Perhaps some mission modes, would work better than others, i.e. LOR, EOR, etc. You'd have to figure out how to send along a rover and a small satellite, etc. I suppose the downside is that the contracts could become too complex, but I think it would give the sense that some Kerbal scientists devise some scientific priorities for the mission rather than just doing something for the sake of doing it. Also, completing it would give a more profound sense of accomplishment, in my opinion. As it is, it's relatively straightforward to complete some of these contracts. Also, my nerdy, curious, scientific mind wants to take it a step further. I'd love it if the science data that you gather could be used to answer real scientific questions about the Kerbal solar system. I want to know the geologic history of Minmus. What makes Eve purple? Whether life exists on Lathe? And what is the origin of those Easter eggs, for gosh sakes? But that's probably going a bit too far. I'm sure it's because I'm a real scientist that I want to know the answer to these types of questions. Sadly, I'm only a molecular biologist, not a rocket scientist. I love how that's sadly.
Yeah.
Sadly, I'm a molecular biologist.
I'm not an ologist of anything.
You know, I mean, seriously, I am so impressed with that. And then he goes, sadly, that's all I am.
Yeah.
It's like, don't be sad.
Just a lowly molecular biologist.
Hey, do you know what? If anything, the molecules look up to you, man.
Yeah.
So, Homer to your mobile, Nathania, P.S. Oh, you're going to love this. A recent contract I completed required me to build a base on Minmus. For some reason, it needed to have a wheel on it to satisfy the requirements. I figured I'd mount the whole thing on a wheeled chassis so that it could rove about a bit, basically a mobile base. Feeling whimsical, I decided to name it Homer Base. Get it? Get it? A mobile base named Homer? I know, lame joke, but true story. And P.P.S., this is the one you're going to love.
Yeah.
I really appreciated Noss's defense of Prometheus back in episode 8 or 9. I was disappointed in that movie the first time through, but now I will give it a second try.
Anytime.
I still say, when you're in hotels, because your job requires you to spend about 4 or 5 days a week in hotels.
Yeah.
I still think that you stand out in the hallway and listen when that's on like HBO and stuff.
Uh-huh.
You stand out in the hallway and just listen. And when you hear somebody watching the movie, it's like you know, bam, 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 bam. Hey, can I explain the movie to you?
Yeah. Can we talk about this? I think we should talk about this.
Yeah.
But that was it was my first week of doing all this travel stuff, this travel job. And the first week I was out there, Prometheus is what was on.
Yeah.
And my roommate wanted to watch the game, and I was like, I was the new guy, so I'm not going to be like, oh, okay. So he wanted, he wanted to watch a basketball game, and so we watched that, and then like the next night it was on again. They did an encore. They're showing Prometheus again. I'm like, oh, all right. And I have it on there, and he kind of looks at me. He's like, well, there's no game tonight, and so like we sat and watched Prometheus. Right. It was awesome.
And did you explain it the whole time? Did you go? You see that? You
No,
see that?
See, we were on day 2.
There's the mother alien right there.
We were on day 2 of 4, so I don't think I wanted to get that. It was my second day on the job. I didn't want to brand myself that early.
That's when you get out the duct tape and divide the room up.
Yeah.
The next thing we have is actually it's not a news story. It's a forum post, but it's about a board game. So
Yeah.
I thought this would be just perfect for you.
Okay, so this one, it was posted on Board Game Geek. Is that correct? I'm looking at the format.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, I'm just looking at the format. I know it's Board Game Geek.
You're asking like the one person that is not capable of even remotely answering that question.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so the forum post is by Hayu or Heyu or Hayoo. Heyo.
Heyo.
I'd have to be 1-0. Anyway, first off, he has a Kerbal avatar, so you already know he's headed in the right direction.
Yeah, it's the Leonardo da Vinci man with the splayed arms and legs.
Yeah, he said,
but it's a Kerbal head.
Okay, so I'm just going to summarize it.
Okay.
It's called Mini Space Program, and just the mock-up image he has a bunch of, in board gaming, they're called meeples. Meeples?
Yeah,
they are small wooden pieces that represent things in a game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he has...
Is this, just so I'm clear, this is kind of like a Kerbal board game ish.
It looks like it's a kind of game called a micro game, where it's basically just like a board game, like a board and card game, just very small and meant to be played very quickly. So in the mock-up, he has a whole bunch of different little meeples that are in the shape of different rockets or satellites and buildings, and it's...
it even says adaptable for Kerbal Space Program theme.
Yeah, so it's like you don't have the ability to make that, especially if it's going to make a profit. Mm-hmm. But you could say it's going to be something like this, and hopefully somebody would say, hey, you have the rights to use that intellectual property. Mm-hmm. By the way he's making it look is you have to have, there's cards with different places like, the moon, Mars, like orbiting different planets. And he's trying to make it 1 to 5 players. He talks a lot about components. And the base for what I get from the gameplay is that you have to amass certain materials. Mm-hmm. And then by having those materials, you can basically in-game purchase whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So if you're trying to build a probe that can go around Mars, then you would get whatever materials you needed, and you would buy that certain area. He said he was trying to go for something between Settlers of Catan and Munchkin, which are 2 kind of different games, but I can kind of tell the weight he's going for. He's in the concept stage, so like everything you see in the picture may not make it, just for the sake of these are all just real neat looking pieces, but we're not exactly sure what's actually in the game yet.
Right.
So it's kind of I can tell he has his heart in the right place because he's definitely working. This little mock-up image looks like he had put a lot of work into it.
I was going to say, this looks it looks professional.
Yeah, no, it looks really good. So usually what happens when you're in the concepting stage of any game, like including, games I've made that are extremely simple, you start off with a whole lot, and you basically start off with a tree, and you whittle it down to the best toothpick that you can,
Well, you remember somebody had asked you if you were going to make a Kerbal game.
Yeah.
Or if you were going to make Kerbal as a board game.
How would I do it?
Yeah. You were in kind of a different direction, weren't you?
Yeah, because, this is focusing on the way this game would feel is that you're amassing resources to purchase things, and it sort of has that Kerbal theme there. Whenever you want to capture the theme of a game, you really want to look at what is the part that gets people the most excited. And with this, it's kind of like having the achievements there for... I talked about the game that's in prototype right now called Don't Explode, and it sort of captures the...
I still love that title.
Yeah, it captures the rocket building element. You're not going to get the real-time experience of actually, successfully landing something. It would be really hard to capture that in a board game and actually get it to be a good board game. But from what this guy's making, it looks like it'll be pretty neat, or at least it'll have really neat pieces. And I don't know. I look forward to seeing what the guy does with it.
Let me just toss this in real quick. If you're curious to see what we're talking about, and you're subscribed to our Twitter feed, the reason we even know about this, user Futurama King had sent us a tweet, and it said, "Nos, you have to talk about this on your next podcast."
Yeah,
and that's where the link to this came from. So if you're curious, if you want to actually look at what we're talking about, be sure and pull up. I had retweeted it, so all you have to do is check our Twitter feed, and you can see it. But it's Futurama King, and he's got a link to this.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks interesting. I knew that with your board game background, you would be able to look at this, and I had a feeling you'd be able to kind of absorb this and just describe it a lot better than I could have. So
it looks like it could be pretty neat. I mean, is it going to capture the entire Kerbal experience? No, that's something you have to divide up. Like, you don't experience what it's like to march and mobilize and supply troops and risk. You just put them on the board somewhere, and you see things in a very big scope. So with something like this, you're seeing trying to get achievements, like putting a satellite around this, body. And as the game develops, at this point, when you're in that part of game development, things change massively, constantly. Yeah. So, I mean, and it's not like if one game is made about Kerbal Space Program, none others could be. You could do one where you could pick one of the 4 Kerbal characters that you get in the not the administration building, but the contracts building, and you can make a game off of what their job is. So you can make it off of the scientists and how they spin science to make parts and get the assembly for parts together. You could have one for the guys trying to crunch numbers to fund a space program where parts keep getting used for things and blowing up and trying to salve and keep from going bankrupt.
Right.
You can make a game out of a lot of the aspects. So I'm really interested to see what it is. If it's a micro game, it will more than likely be a very low cost and very portable. And
he was saying 30 to 40 minutes playtime.
Yeah, and usually those kind of games, they also offer print and play. So where
they offer what?
Print and play.
Print and play.
Yeah, where they provide like PDF files, and usually for free. Sometimes they charge, and you could take that to a print shop and have it all printed out, so you wouldn't actually have to go buy a physical copy.
Oh, okay.
So,
and how do you get the tokens?
You would either use coins, just pocket change, or you could print out and cut out paper coins or paper icons or whatever the tokens are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to give you a lot of credit for something. You have expanded my understanding of board gaming. I mean, seriously, I remember reading an article in Wired magazine a couple of years ago where they were talking about Settlers of Catan, and they were saying that outside of the United States there was this huge audience for board games.
Oh yeah.
And they were talking about how this game was so popular because it broke a lot of the board game rules. They were specifically saying that, when you do the traditional board games like Monopoly and things like that, that there comes a point in the game where the person who's going to win is going to win.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's like this prolonged death spiral for everybody else, and they just have to just kind of ride it out until, and they said, those games can, you get to a point where it's not fun for anyone who's not about to win.
Yeah.
And they were talking about Settlers of Catan being a different experience. Even right up to the finish line, other people could do things to where they, could actually turn it around. And then listening to you talk about it, it's really expanded my horizons in terms of, I think of board gaming in such a different way now.
Yeah.
Because before, until you had talked about it and until I had read that article, to me, when someone said board gaming, I mean, I immediately thought of Monopoly and the Game of Life. And, those were things that I just was not interested in.
Yeah, I remember the first couple games I played that were not those like classic Americana kind of games. And I was just like, well, you can actually do a whole lot of stuff with this. It's like, It's like whenever they first, just think about the first games that moved to 3D and things like that. You started off in your side scrolling, and then the depths of where you could move in 3 dimensions, and then like anytime you see a new innovative game, it just comes, oh, I didn't think to do that. Like when Resident Evil 4, I mean, I think there were games before that did it, but when Resident Evil 4 introduced QuickTime events,
right?
So you would be in a cutscene, and all of a sudden you had to mash A, otherwise you're going to get run over by a boulder. Well, how many games do that now? You know, so it's whenever you see that new something, and it sort of just like unlocks this door of like possibilities.
I will say though, my level of ignorance about this prior to having my horizons broadened. Is very pervasive, though, because if I do mention board gaming, most of the people that I talk to immediately go, oh, I'm just not that interested. Because they're doing the same thing I used to do, which is board gaming is Monopoly, and it's
all that stuff I played as a kid forever, and I've experienced all of it, and it's just not interesting. But it's starting to come around to where new things are coming along, and people are actually, anytime a country experiences a recession, board game sales actually go up because it's, relatively low cost, and you can continually get enjoyment out of it.
It's a lot of entertainment bang for the buck.
Oh, yeah.
That's one thing I've always, when I've had my Kerbal in the Wild sightings, I always tell people that was the best money I've ever spent. Because when you average out, I don't remember what I paid for the game. I got it on a sale.
Yeah.
But when you average out my per hour cost of that initial purchase, and when you look at the amount of time I've spent playing Kerbal, I mean, I think I'm to the point now to where it's less than a penny an hour.
Yeah.
And the longer I play, the more that cost drops. People complain a lot about video games, how, they're so expensive. And it's like, let's say you go to the store and pay $60 for a game. Well, if you play the game for 60 hours, your per hour cost is $1 per hour of entertainment. Now compare that to buying a movie. A movie typically is going to cost you $20 and it's a 2-hour movie. Well, what's your per hour cost? It's $10 an hour.
And you can re-experience the same exact 2 hours.
Yeah.
Where with the game that lasts 60 hours, you're experiencing a new hour.
Yeah.
Hopefully, every hour for the 60. Yeah, I was joking around with a friend. I said,
games is good spending.
Yeah. I said, like, if you were to get the Dynasty Warriors games and make it to where I could spend, like I could give them $1 to play the game for 15 minutes, they would make $15 a year off of me probably, because every now and then I get a craving to play those games.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to spend $60 and get it, the newest one. I was like, I just want to give you $1, give me 15 minutes. I'm done,
I know this sounds dumb, but considering how much I've gotten out of Kerbal, there's a little part of me that almost wants to buy it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I know Squad, if they're listening, they're probably thinking, hey, that's great that he loves the game, but he bought it once.
Yeah, you've already made the money off of him.
We made the money off of him.
You can do it. Payday 2 did. They made a $20 expansion pack. It comes with like 4 little masks for your characters.
Right.
And essentially what they said is, hey, this isn't really about the masks. This is just, if you want to give us $20 to help us,
right,
here's a way to give us $20, so you could like do it directly through Steam.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, with them being upfront about it. What I wasn't okay with is it had a name that was so similar to an actual expansion pack that it kind of sounded like something like you were buying the better version of that expansion pack. Not wild about that, but the concept was fine.
If Squad were to introduce something like, for example, I'm not a fan of, some games, they sell you the base game, but then then they go, if
you want to put fuel in if you want to buy, if you want your parachute to deploy,
it's like,
pay an extra $1.
It's like $60 for a first person shooter. But if you want a gun, well, that's another $20. That kind of stuff I'm not real crazy about, but if Squad decided that, hey, we're going to, $5 and you can add on a create your own Kerbal. add-on.
Yeah.
Where you can, design a Kerbal and name it and little purchases like that don't affect the gameplay.
Yeah, that aren't necessary for the gameplay, but are
but,
like
it's kind of a way to give them a little bit more money.
Yeah.
Stuff like that I would definitely be on board with.
Yeah.
So I know that there's an app, if I remember correctly, there's an app where you can actually design Kerbals, but my understanding is you cannot import them into the game. And I would love to be able to create Kerbals and
yeah, that'd be pretty fun.
So anyway, of course, masochistic me, I'd create a Kerbal that looked just like me and then I would punish him.
That's what you get.
That's what hubris. I get. Yeah. Jeb still has not come back.
Wow.
Isn't that weird?
It's done.
I have apparently killed Jeb for good.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on. The next letter comes to us from Shen, S-H-E-N. So hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Hi, Biff and Nos. First, great podcast. I spent the last 3 weeks getting caught up while I work. I'm from Canada. This was the letter I was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And can't tell you why episode 6 is so popular. I don't recall you mentioning hockey, poutine, or Tim Hortons. Poutine, by the way, if you don't know, it's a French fry. It's a French fry dish. It's French fries and brown gravy and cheese curds. And anyway, I looked it up. I wikied it.
I've been at a couple places that have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that Men at Work song, where they talk about Vegemite.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I was like, what's Vegemite? Like, oh, okay. I get it. I thought I'd pass on some thoughts on 0.90, the upgrade to 1.0, and I had a story from my last play session. 0.90. I'm a career player. That's the Gnossian school of thought.
Yeah, yeah.
I added that, by the way, that he didn't say that. And really enjoy the new contracts that have been integrated into the game. I really like the idea mentioned in one of your podcasts about having secondary objectives. It allows a player to get some money for exceeding objectives, such as given altitudes. That was your idea, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. You don't know your own idea?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was my idea.
Okay. It was $1 million idea. But see, I reminded you of it, so I get half of it.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
I missed a bunch of the altitude contracts and wouldn't have known about them if it wasn't for your podcast. Either way, I think the payouts, pacing, and difficulty of the contract system needs a lot of work still, but do enjoy the challenge it presents now. 1.0. I agree with a lot of people that the game is not ready for a full release. As mentioned above, the contract system needs a lot of balancing before it's ready for the mainstream. Ditto for the building costs. I'm still early in my career and have only upgraded the launch pad, and I think I'll probably have to end up grinding contracts, i.e. repeating the same types of contracts over and over, in order to upgrade my buildings to progress. I don't mind this too much, but for a new player, I think this would seem unfair. A story. I have a young daughter at home and very rarely get much time to play KSP nowadays. It's funny how the first part of that sentence explains the second part of that sentence.
Yeah, yeah.
This weekend, my daughter went down for a very long nap, and I finally got a chance to sit down and advance my KSP game a bit. I wonder how old his daughter is. I play career mode without saves, but with reverts. I use a few mods that I think enhance the game. FAR, Kerbal Engineer, Kerbal Alarm Clock, and one that I think would really help NOS out, Stage Recovery. It allows you to attach parachutes to your spent stages, and as long as you stage the parachutes as you separate the stage and have enough parachutes, it allows you to recoup some costs of the spent stage. It makes the early game a bit easier, as well as adding a bit of extra challenge, like how to get a spent stage out of orbit to save the cost. Anyway, during my recent playtime, I noticed some new contracts for putting a satellite in a specific orbit. The payout was great, and I felt that my recent upgrade to the launch pad, my only building upgrade so far, would allow me to fulfill these contracts pretty easily, so I accepted 2 of them. My first launch went great, and I got my satellite into the correct orbit without too much of an issue. However, once in orbit, I found out that the satellite needed solar panels to fulfill the contract, not just batteries. Dang. Back at my tech tree, I needed about 85 science to unlock solar panels. To get this, I figured a quick swing by the mun would be the easiest way. Having never done this without patched conics, I didn't really know what I was in for. I had to cancel one of my satellite contracts and accept the Explore the Mun contract in order to get the funds needed, as well as to increase my payout. I decided Jeb would be the Kerbal for this mission, as he'd recently leveled up and could now hold attitudes. Yeah. You like that one.
Yeah, one slip of the key.
One slip of the key.
And you go from height to...
Yeah. Well, in this case, it was one slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
But Jeb had leveled up and could now hold attitudes, prograde, and retrograde. Here, you have to say the next part. Say that.
Sweet.
Well, you have to... Yeah. Sweet.
Sweet.
Okay, good.
Sweet?
Yeah, give me a couple of different reads on that.
Sweet. Sweet. Sweet.
Sweet.
Sweet.
Okay. The launch went well, and I got into orbit around the moon without too much of an issue, picking up some science along the way. Now, I just needed to get the science home to fulfill the second part of the contract and give me the points to unlock solar panels to fulfill my remaining satellite contract. Piece of cake, right? I have a feeling that this is about to unravel. My burn back to Kerbin did not go to plan. I ended up in a highly elliptical orbit with a periapsis well above Kerbin atmosphere. I had a decent amount of fuel and waited until I was at my apoapsis to do my deorbit burn to maximize efficiency. I watched as my periapsis lowered and lowered and lowered and stopped at 200 kilometers, 130 kilometers shy of what I needed. Jeb was officially stranded, with the precious science needed to fulfill my other open contract. Okay, what to do? This highly elliptical orbit meant I could probably use Jeb's EVA pack to push my craft out of an orbit and get it into Kerbin's atmosphere. If I could only unlock EVA, not having the funds for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that one's rough, because that's also a good science boost, is doing the EVA outside the... Yeah.
Boy, you remember I mentioned Death Spiral? That's what this is turning into.
Yeah.
Not having the funds for that, I needed to cancel my remaining satellite contract, my whole reason for launching this endeavor, and pick up another different science around the moon contract. This would give me the science I need to unlock solar panels to complete my now canceled satellite contracts, and the funds I need to get Jeb home, or at least get me closer. The launch and Mun injection burn all went great. And since I didn't have to orbit the Mun, just pick up science, I had lots of Delta V to get home. However, as I was doing my deorbit burn to re-enter Kerbin's atmosphere, I noticed an object on a trajectory out of Kerbin's SOI, sphere of influence. Jeb had inadvertently picked up a gravity assist from the Mun and was launched into deep space, much like my ships in Joule orbit.
Yeah.
So after that, I got my science home and was able to unlock solar panels, but I lost Jeb. Rescue mission will be planned. Had to cancel my two original contracts and had a blast doing it all. Thanks, and keep up the good work. Shin. Do you remember I told you that I had, when I landed on Tylo, I didn't have enough fuel to get back up into orbit?
Uh-huh.
I actually tried, because, people are always talking about using EVA.
Yeah.
I actually tried. I burned full blast off the surface of Tylo, and I got as high as I possibly could, and right at the apoapsis, I had Limcott bail out and burn his EVA pack.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying anything to get back up into orbit.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what else I tried? And I discovered this. I knew this was a long shot anyway, but I didn't realize how much of a long shot it was until I actually tried it. I thought to myself, if I can just get up high enough to where I am in the path of the orbiting ship,
mm-hmm.
and let the other ship basically ram into me, that it would, hopefully if it didn't destroy me, that it would carry me into an orbit.
Yeah, it seems like the plane made sense until that part, but
yeah. Well,
if the plan was to blow yourself up, then yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, positioning yourself to be in the right place at the right time was almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, I did get close. I was fairly close when the orbiting ship went by.
Yeah.
And it was, if there had been sound in space, I mean, the Doppler effect of that thing passing me by would have been,
yeah.
Because, I mean, that's how fast it was. And that's when I realized, okay, there's no possible way I could have been in front of that thing and not been anything but dead. Because, if you're just sitting there stationary and that thing comes whipping around, that thing is traveling very fast. You forget when you're doing rendezvous, part of what you're doing is you're matching speed with the object. And so you get to where your orbits and your speed and your trajectory are matched. And then it's a matter of changing your speed relative to your target to where you're approaching it at a reasonable pace where you can actually gently bump into it and dock.
Mm-hmm.
If you're standing still and your target is whipping by at a couple thousand meters per second,
yeah,
no. That's not going to end well. But I actually, just to show you how desperate I was to get off Tylo without having to launch one of many rescue missions, I actually at one point thought to myself, if I could just get in front of the orbiting ship.
Yeah. It's desperate thoughts right there.
Yeah. Again, let me do the Doppler. Seriously, that's about as fast as that thing went by me.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of like, I had it targeted.
Like trying to hitch a ride on a, race car.
Well, I kept thinking, I got up there to the right altitude, and I kept thinking I should be able to see this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking, and I was looking, and I was looking, and then all of a sudden it was just like, oh, there it is. Oh, there it went. Okay, we have some tweets.
Now on for the tweets.
Tweet.
At Jeb's Junkyard. When you hear the dog bark, you take 2 shots. When you hear Biff mispronounce Patreon, you drink the whole bottle. Good luck.
Apparently, I have been saying Patreon.
Yeah.
It's Patreon.
Patreon. Like patrons,
I guess.
For eons.
Well, that's what they were saying.
Yeah, it's like patrons for eons.
So anyway, we can't say
got,
Patreon anymore. We have to say Patreon.
Patreon.
Get your Patreon.
And Mitten posted, Homeworld Remastered is filled with bugs. Wait until decent patch releases? They killed my Homeworld mojo. How could they?
You want to hear something really silly?
What?
Okay, how excited was I about Homeworld Remastered?
Pretty excited.
Do you know how much I've played it since it's come out?
I'm guessing not much. Not enough to justify.
The one time, you remember last week I said I played the first level.
But you've already played through it, so.
A lot.
Yeah. So I guess somebody who's new to it.
I played the first level, and I went back to Kerbal.
Yeah.
And I've been wrestling with Tylo ever since.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Once you finish off Bop, you may go back to Homeworld. Who knows?
Well, or start looking. I start doing Easter egg hunting.
Yeah.
Oh, and I should say the tweets. This is like the Amy K edition.
And starting with at Jacob_Orth1, referring to Amy K's name for her Duna lander. My ships for Duna are called Duna 1, Duna 2, and Duna 3. You are not alone with the boring names. At This Is Alex Boyd, Tylo does not have much gravity? Psst. Tylo has...
No. It's...
Oh, sorry. Tylo has 80% of Kerbin's gravity, the third highest landable after Eve and Kerbin.
This is the tweet that I was talking about that made me realize that I was locked into a false assumption.
Yeah. And it's very different because you don't have an atmosphere to like parachute with.
Yeah.
So
this was honestly, if I could make let me try it. Can you hear that?
You slapping your hand against
your
forehead?
I'm smacking my forehead.
Yeah.
I mean, because that was literally... Well, when I got that, when he tweeted that, I saw that, and and then I went, he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I went, oh my, I've been stuck on this false assumption. That's why I'm not able to land.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks to This Is Alex Boyd, I was able to successfully land on Tylo because he's the one that pointed out to me, you need to rethink what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's, there's kind of that showbiz thing where, where people, they always go, we couldn't do this without you.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I mean, it's true with this
podcast.
That is true.
Yeah.
We rely heavily on the audience.
Yeah. I mean, we rely. Helped us. We had a letter today that said, they were helped by the podcast. We've been helped by the people writing into it, and we've helped some people out by just, it being here.
Well, we don't claim to be experts. I mean, we said from the very beginning, we're learning, we're going to make mistakes. Hopefully you'll learn with us. We've learned a lot from the audience. If it weren't for the audience, this podcast would be about 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
It would be, what was your progress? You'd tell me, I'd tell you mine, and we'd be done.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, think about it. We get letters from the audience. We get advice. We get, Amy does, every week she does a Kerbal Life.
Kerbal Life.
I mean, if it weren't for the audience, there would be a very short podcast.
Yeah.
And it would be basically, well, how did you mess things up this week?
Okay, next one is from Haywood Floyd, also known as @SylpheedX. Amy K really tied the podcast together. And thank you, Haywood, because that was the title of this one.
That's what gave us the whole Big Lebowski theme.
And the next one's from Ascalon on Twitter, known as @IntDef. Here I am with Jeb, enjoying first sunrise in orbit after playing Kettlewell mode.
Yeah. Again, this is the Amy K edition of the tweets.
Yeah. @John Skyzar. My first mission to Jewel, screenshot included. I just went to have a look around, but had an accidental encounter with Lathe.
Can I say it? Hail, Skyzar!
Yeah. @Blue K. Hey, Amy K is back on the show. What a great surprise. @Minustar. That Hardcore with Amy K jingle was awesome.
And I should tell you, you're about to hear it again.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, we can thank Amy for this next one.
Yeah. @TopBoom1. #Tylo Swift.
Also known as she who must only partially be named.
Yeah. @Littlest_1. Just witnessed the boyfriend light up when you mentioned him in the new episode. Yes, my boyfriend made the tooting thrusters.
Do you know what I wanted to do right there?
Uh-huh.
When you said that, I wanted to play that sound.
Yeah.
I can't find it.
Yeah, I forgot what it was called.
I said last week I said that it's easy to find on YouTube. It's, the farting Kerbal noises. I can't find it.
Yeah.
If somebody has a link to this thing, could you please send it to us?
Yeah, tweet it to us because we lost it.
Or email it or something.
I think it is in the depths of our Twitter somewhere.
Honestly, I'm surprised the cops haven't shown up to drag me off. The search terms that I've been putting into YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's like, Kerbal fart. Farting Kerbal.
Wait. Check it
Fart
right now.
noises,
Check it right
Kerbal.
now. Open up our Twitter. I want to see if we can find this live.
Find what?
Well, we're gonna find the video. I think it's in our videos because I think we posted it.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think we did.
Yeah, we had to. How could I not post that?
I think we talked about it.
Oh, okay.
And it was a ways back because I looked. We did not do a link to it on our webpage.
Yeah, but on our Twitter, I think we tweeted it.
We'd have to scroll a ways back. I'll look for it.
Search our Twitter.
But seriously, if somebody has a link to this thing, I can't find it.
Yeah.
For the life of me, I cannot find it.
Well, in the meantime, we do not have a Kerbal Life this week.
Yeah.
But we have something that's just as special.
Hardcore Kerbal with Amy K. If you're not playing extreme, you're weak.
Well, hello, Amy.
Hello.
You have ventured into the realm of real solar system. You have to tell me about it.
Well, I decided to make things a little harder for myself because I don't know why.
Because you've never done that.
Oh, I've never done that before. It's very unlike me. So real solar system is one of those that I've always had my eye on, but I didn't like the fact that I thought that it rearranged all the planets to create the solar system, and I didn't like that because I liked living in the Kerbal universe.
Right.
And then I was watching North Star on Steam, and he plays with real solar system, and I was talking to him about the only reason I don't do that is because I don't like that. And then he says there's a version, which is what I now use, called 64K, which just scales stock up by 6.4 times. So it is still the Kerbal system. It's just 6.4 times bigger.
Okay.
So I've installed that, and I installed a couple of new mods. Just little ones like Kerbal Alarm Clock and procedural parts. And so I went from Duna, which I was really proud of in my old game,
Your old days. A week ago. A week ago is your old days.
Yeah, but I was, my monstrosity got to the surface, and I was I actually saw a picture. It was on its side, but it was on the surface, and I was happy. I was like, yeah, let's go back to basics.
Yeah.
So I installed Real Solar System. I went from Duna to Kerbin, and I'm still on Kerbin. So the first thing I did when I got it, I thought, let's just go through the basics. So I launched straight up. I only had 3,500 Delta V, and I thought, this isn't going to get me anywhere close. And I got into space, and I was shocked. I was thinking, okay, this can't be right. This was supposed to be really, really hard. This isn't hard at all. And I made the mistake. I made the mistake of even tweeting that out. That this isn't as hard as I thought. So
that's famous last words, isn't it?
Yeah, added a bit more Delta V just in case, and tried to get into orbit.
Really?
Nowhere near. I have not got into orbit yet, and I've been playing this so much this week. I've come ever so close. I've had 9,000 Delta V ships that have failed to get into Kerbin orbit.
Really?
So, yeah.
Now, let me ask you. I was concerned that this would cause your system to chug. Are you noticing any performance issues?
Actually, no. It's another thing I was worried about before I got it, but it's almost exactly the same for as far as I can tell.
Even with aren't you having to build bigger ships though?
Yeah, but so far it's nothing crazy. But that said, I'm in career mode, so I've been struggling to build the bigger ships that I need. Okay. See, it's kind of catch-22. I need big ships to get over the Delta V problem, and to do that, I need funds and I need science, but I can't get them because I can't get my usual thing I do is I go straight to the Mun and get some science, or the Minmus and get some science. I can't do that. I even got to one point, I got back from a mission, and because I didn't do everything I was trying to do, I couldn't continue. I didn't have enough funds. I couldn't launch another ship to even do any of the contracts. So I had to actually start over. I imagine that's what game over will be in the stock, but it's really challenging. I love it so much.
Of course. Have you considered doing this in science mode?
No.
Not even possible.
No, it's career mode. I have to do it in career mode. But don't get me wrong, I will do it.
Okay.
I will, and because I'm getting closer. It's just all about efficiency now. My 9,000 Delta V rocket would have got into orbit, I think, if it had been slightly more efficient. So I'm having to think more about things like that now than I did before.
The biggest question, because this is a game, the number one question, are you having fun?
Oh, yes. I'm failing so horribly, and it's so incredibly, monstrously hard. I'm loving every minute of it. Okay. So you're having a lot of fun with this. I take it this is not something you would recommend for a beginner. No, well, I still class myself technically as a beginner, just upper beginner. But for a new beginner, I would not suggest touching Real Solar System at all, no.
So final thoughts, Real Solar System, what would you say?
Devilishly hard, but really, really fun if you're masochistic.
I nominate that for Kerbal's new tagline. Although she said one earlier that could also be, which is she said failing spectacularly and loving it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
There's a t-shirt for you.
So squad, if you're looking for new slogans for Kerbal.
I looked during that whole update. You know what I didn't find?
The farting.
I didn't find the farting video.
I told you it's far back.
That's on a phone. I don't know. I think if whenever I check it on my computer, I can find the videos faster.
Okay. If you find it, but if not, we're still trying to find the link.
Yeah.
To the farting Kerbal video.
The search for the farting video.
Yeah, but anyway, that was Amy K. She is now playing with the Real Solar System mod, and I wanted to get her thoughts on it. It is incredibly difficult, and she's loving it. So anyway, Amy, as you know, had a birthday a week back, and the Kerbal life gets staggered because a lot of production is involved in it. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why there isn't a Kerbal Life this week.
Yeah, she's been on a massive bender, and
Yeah.
she's still sobering up.
That's it.
Kerbal Life is kind of put on hold while she, tries to replenish her fluids.
Are you going to do your Kerbalcast doesn't endorse binge drinking? Your disclaimer again?
I said don't drink in Kerbal. If it's your birthday, go nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, every time we mispronounce Patreon...
Oh.
Yep.
Alcoholism.
Yep.
Right there.
Everybody just chug-a-lugged. One thing I wish about Amy, she plays, she has a Mac.
Yeah.
And Steam right now, according to what she says, you can't watch.
Yeah, you can't watch people. I think you can watch people, but you can't be watched, or was that it?
Yeah, I think it's because I've tried to. I've seen her playing, and I've, clicked, watch now, and it'll come back and it says, the software doesn't support this. But apparently that's coming.
Yeah.
But I would love to watch her play Real Solar System sometime. I'm what she's describing. I don't know if that would be fun for me.
I know what it wouldn't be for me, and that's fun. No thanks.
I just, I love getting up into orbit, and I love going to other planets. And I mean, she's not even into orbit yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I'm good.
Boy, North Star and Amy K, those are birds of a feather.
Yeah.
It's like they sit around and just think of ways to make it more difficult. But anyway, if you would like to contact Amy via Steam, she says that she has no problem with us giving out her username. I'm going to have to spell this. It's kind of a funny spelling of Amy83, but it's AOUMI83. That's her Steam name. So look for her and friend her. Don't be surprised if she asks to watch you play. She can watch other people.
Yeah.
But until they do an update.
It's a one-way street.
Yes. She who cannot be watched.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you, Amy. And we'll be back with a Kerbal Life next week. We have some thanks that we want to go ahead and toss out. As I said before, a big thank you to our listeners. I mean, seriously, this podcast would not exist without you. Thank you so much to regular contributors, everybody who wrote in. Amy, thank you for your review of Real Solar System.
And we also want to thank Andy M. for another excellent audio letter.
Mm-hmm.
And all the music you've heard is by Professor Ope. Professor Ope.
Professor Opie.
Professor Ope is overpowered.
From the Mayberry Show.
Man, I just love that.
Yeah.
So we're sorry,
it's
Professor
music
Soap.
to listen to when you go down to the fishing hole.
So
we're good cracker.
We're sorry, Professor Soap. We got your name wrong right then. If anyone,
we got your name.
Yeah,
you got his name wrong.
Hey, no, we failed together. So we got your name wrong right then. And if you'd like to hear his music, you can go to facebook.com/Professor Soap or find him on his website, profsoap.com.
And also, we want to thank Squad for an awesome game. What did I say earlier? The per hour cost.
Yeah.
It was a very good investment on my part. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can send us text letters or you can send us audio letters via MP3. It's kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. You can also get us on Twitter @Kerbalcast.
You can also subscribe to us on iTunes and download episodes directly from kerbalpodcast.libsyn.com.
Look for us on Steam. Our usernames, Biff Aldrin, Nostromo, that's Nos, and then Tromo.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, Amy is AOUMI83. And if you would like to help support this podcast, go to patreon.com and just search for Kerbalcast. And you can donate to us there. That wraps it up for today's edition of Kerbalcast. This is episode 41. This is what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps. That is the, if you know the movie, you know what the uncensored version of that line is.
Yeah.
I am your LMP, Lunar Module Pilot, Biff Aldrin. Our CMP, Command Module Pilot, is
Nostromo.
Until next time, happy Kerbaling.